is declared by having these, not curly brackets, just regular brackets. And inside the list, you can put whatever you want. You just need to separate it with a comma. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this case, it's yelling at me because it wants me to put spaces here. But in this case, I have a list of integers. And the first variable is 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. And Python is cool. You can put like strings in here too, which is perfectly fine. You can either put lists inside of lists, like whatever, right? You can do as much as you want. Python is super flexible. Who cares? So in this case, if you're following at home, you have integers here. What we call stuff with decimal places is a float. So you can have floats in there, that's fine. Just make sure there's a comma. And it's not yelling at me because this is perfectly fine in Java or Python. And you can print out the list. It's gonna work perfectly fine. So there you go, it prints it out. And that is a list, but it's usually like you're gonna want to keep your lists all one data type. All right, don't like mix all of these together. It's like obviously this looks terrible. It's really confusing. You have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what's inside the list. The name list by itself is a terrible name, obviously. So just like follow good practices. Just keep the list one data type. Be it floats, integers, strings, whatever you want. So that is a list. So why don't we just create a simple list of random integers? So have 6, 7, 3, and then 10, right? So there you have a list. Now the question comes to how do you access each variable inside the list? And the answer to that is in programming, each of these there's a word I'm looking for, I guess iterables, variable, we'll just call them variables for now, but there's a word specific term for these, is assigned a value or is assigned an index. It's specifically called an index. So I'll just create I'll just number the indexes for you. In programming, the index always starts with 0. Actually, yeah, like for the most part, for Java and Python, definitely. For JavaScript also, starts with 0. So our number system counts with 1. Like if I have, if I want to count how many kids are in a class, I'm going to start with 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to start with 0. That's kind of confusing. So in this case, it starts with 0. So just keep that in mind when you're programming. So this would be the 0. The first element would be index 0. Second element would be index 1. Third element would be index 2, and so on and so forth. So keep that in mind as we move on. So how do we want to access? We want to access, say, the 4th variable in the list. We would write the variable, or let's just print it out, right? List, and then to access a attribute inside, or a variable inside of the list, we would have these brackets also. And then does anyone know what the index for the 4th element would be? I'm gonna put the index in here also. So does anyone know the index? Yeah, it's not 4. Yeah, it's 3. There you go. It's 3. So this is how you, so if 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 3. Okay, that's kind of confusing. We'll change this to like 6 or something. So I want to print out the fourth variable inside the list. It's a better word for it. I'm not sure. It's escaping me right now. So I'll put index 3 inside because you count 0, 1, 2, 3, and you get 6, and it prints out 6. It's exactly what we want. So that is how you would figure out, like that's how you would access the whatever element. Oh, they're called an element. Sorry, whatever element in the list. And you can do other stuff like you can write like -1, And what -1 will do is not, there's obviously like nothing back here. This is 0. And if you were looking at a number line, it would just like move on and on and on and on, and there's nothing there. So what -1 does is it goes back and it accesses the last element of the list. So you get 10. So that's -1. You can keep on doing it, -5, or let's say -3 to be less confusing. So this is -1, this is -2, this is -3. Prints out 6, right? There you go. You're not going to be using that too much though. -1's pretty useful for accessing the last one. -2 may be useful. Like negatives in general are kind of confusing to think about. So, and I believe you can, let me check this out. You can splice them? Yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry. For 3 and 4. Alright. You can put a colon inside. 6. Okay, and you can splice them like this. So, yeah, it's kind of confusing. So it starts at the this would be the 4th element, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it continues into the 6th element, which is, no, it stops right before the 6th element, which is this. This is the 5th one. That's right before it. So it goes from 3 until 1 less than 6. So that's how you would do that. That's not that that's kind of useful. Not right now for what we're doing. So all right. Okay, it's 2:49. Running out of time. All right. I don't want to make this meeting last too long. So the last thing we'll go over is for loops, and then we'll do function definitions next week. Does that sound cool? Yeah, this took a bit of a while. Actually, we covered a lot of stuff. So it might not, like, this is just the basics. It might not make any sense to you right now. Hopefully it does make some sense, and hopefully I explained it well. But as we start applying it into like actual games and stuff, or whatever else you want to build, it's gonna start making more sense, and it's gonna start clicking. So right now it might be super confusing, and it probably is super confusing the way I'm teaching it. So why don't we do for loops now? So for the standard for loop in Python is what you would call in Java an enhanced for loop, which basically it doesn't have like a counter that goes 1, 2, 3. It doesn't have an I that's being added up every single time. You can do that still in Python, but it's just not the standard. So I'll show you what the very what most times when you're using a for loop, you're going to be traversing a list, right? That's the whole point of a for loop. You'll be traversing stuff like these. You're going to want to go through the for loop. You're going to say you want to print out every element in this list. You're not going to write print list 0 or 0 and then 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. That's going to take forever, okay? Computers can do stuff like that, all right? They are just, this is what they're best at. They're great at doing repeated repetition, so calculations over and over again. So you want to let the computer do your work. Okay, we're lazy here. So for obviously it's a for loop. So for, and you want to have an element here or just a variable. Any variable works. So we'll just call it I. It doesn't have to be I. You can write whatever you want here. It doesn't matter. For I, and then you would write in. If you want to think of it from Java terms, it's kind of like for, you would have a parentheses, and the in would be a colon, and then you would have like list, right? But in Python, that's just your standard for loop. So for I in list, you print I. If you want to print, in this case, each element in the list. So what this is doing is it's assigning a variable I, the first element when the first time it runs through, and then the second element the second time it runs through. Like it's assigning I this value and then this value and then this value from inside the list. So it's gonna print out 3, 6, 7, 6, 7, 10. Right? That's what it's doing in this case. So that is like your box standard for loop. It is just printing each element in the list, and if you want to do other stuff, you can do other stuff. You can do like I, or say you want to do I don't know, you can do a bunch of other stuff. You can do like put an if statement inside of here too. Check if like if I equals 3, right? And then you can print I in that case, and you're just gonna get 3s. We only have one 3, so it prints a 3. And you can do that. Just remember, when you're writing for loops, if statements, you want to indent and then indent. So this if statement is inside the for loop, and this is inside the if statement, which is also inside the for loop, so you indent twice. All right, keep that in mind. There's no curly braces, not to worry about. No funky formatting like that. It's just indents. So keep that in mind. And now if you want to think about it like the bog standard for loop inside of Java, you can also do that in Python. You would just use the range function. So this creates a like a list of iterables basically. And then say you want to print from 1 to 100, right? You would just do I in range 100, and then you would print I. And oh, sorry, missing a colon. Oh, you know what? It starts at 0, of course. So you want to print 99 elements, or 99 of these numbers starting from 0. I'm sorry, this is printing 100 starting from 0, so it's going to get to the highest of 99. You guys can see that here. So that is kind of like it's kind of like in Java, where you just have a counter that goes up into a certain limit. In Python, you're not going to be using it too often, because most times you're looping through lists. So you do range in this case. Range I in range 100, and then you can print out all the numbers. And if you can also do a bunch of other stuff. So like say I have a variable x gets 0, and then we want to add I to it. So does anyone know what the answer would be? It's like, do quick math, like I don't know, 5 grand or something, right? Print x. So what this would do is starting from 0, it would add 1 and then 2 and then 3 to the variable of x. This is actually wrong. You would just do x gets x plus 1, right? And now we can print out x, and you get 100. Wait, is that correct? No, sorry, that's not what I wanted. Let me think. Yeah, wait, this should be fine. I'm not sure why it's not working.
You wrote 1 instead of I.
Oh, my bad. Right. Okay, of course that makes sense. All right. Yeah, almost 5,000. There you go.